Hello everyone. In this session, I'm going to present some ideas that may help you when teaching grammar. You know, grammar is like the cement of the language. It glues language together. If we look at the vocabulary as the building blocks of the language, then grammar is the material that holds them together. Grammar plays a central role in every language class. So it's important to teach grammar. But more important is how to teach it effectively. Tip 1. Avoid discussing aspects of grammar out of context. Students need to experience grammar in action in a context which is meaningful to them. It's the context that gives the language meaning. It allows us to understand how and when grammar is used. It makes the grammar less abstract and gives it meaning. By a context, I mean an article, a story, a dialogue, a reading passage, or even a song. Any context can help you present the grammatical point you desire. I will give you an example. When teaching second conditional, instead of saying that we use second conditional to express unreal situations and we form it by using so-and-so, tell them a story. Make up any story about a poor man. For example, his name is Ali. He dreams of being rich. He dreams of having lots of things. If he was rich, he would buy a car. If he had money, he would live in a big house. Then move to questions. Start asking them, what would you buy if you were rich? And elicit answers from them. Let them ask you the question, what would you buy if you were rich? Then move to negative sentences. Continue the story by saying, he has a sister, she doesn't like to keep money. She likes to give it to charity. If she was rich, she wouldn't buy a car. Then write all the sentences on the board and ask the students to repeat after you chorally and individually. Then let them practice in pairs. What would you buy if you were rich? Then ask them to form sentences and questions of their own. As you can see, good examples are much more effective than explanations without context. Tip 2. Give students time to discover grammar for themselves. Encourage students to notice things about the language. So, after they have interacted with the text in some way and explored the meaning, we can focus on a part of a text and ask them questions which get them thinking about the language. For example, when teaching a grammatical point like present perfect, you can give them a reading passage that contains some sentences in the present perfect. After reading the passage and getting them acquainted with it, you can focus on one of the sentences. For example, Ahmed has traveled to Paris. Start asking questions about the sentence. What has Ahmed done? Where has he traveled? Who has traveled to Paris? Has he traveled to London? Has he traveled to Paris? Then ask the students to find sentences from the passage that have the same form, has or have plus past participle. Then write all these sentences on the board and attract their attention to the form. By this, you are guiding the students to notice aspects of grammar instead of giving them the rules directly. Tip 3. Use games to teach and reinforce grammar points. The use of games is an effective way to teach grammar. You can use board races. Getting your students engaged in physical activity breaks up the monotony of classroom learning and makes it fun. Suppose that you are teaching active and passive. You can divide the class into teams. Groups of 3 or 4 work together. Give each group a sentence strip on which you have written a sentence in active voice. The students work together to change it to passive. One group member races to the board and rewrites the sentence in passive voice, and you can keep scores for each group. You know, this type of games create a very dynamic class. You can design board races suitable for your lesson. Tip 4. Give students the opportunity to practice grammar in a meaningful way. To improve performance and consolidate learning, you have to give them activities in which they practice grammar. These activities should be staged from controlled practice to free practice. It is important to move from controlled to free practice because this increases the likelihood of students producing correct forms, and of course decreases the likelihood of producing incorrect forms. Another idea related to practice is that when students are doing grammar exercises, it's useful for them to do these exercises in pairs or groups. Sometimes the students are better at helping their classmates understand than we are. Tip 5. Avoid rule-giving teaching. If you give your students some rules to memorize, they may have good grades in exams. But when they are asked to apply the grammar items in real-life situations, they face problems. We as language teachers are often frustrated by the disconnect the students have between knowing the rules of grammar and being able to use them. So remember that knowing a lot of grammar rules is not the point. Students should be able to use them. With this tip, we come to the end of our session today. Thank you very much for listening.